There's no sound like the one pressure makes when it stops trying to kill you. You'd think there would be a rush of relief once the drop ends, once the descent pod seals and the hull equalizes against the weight of 13,000 meters of water. But it's not relief. It's not victory. It's silence. And silence this deep doesn't comfort. It suffocates. I didn't ask to be assigned to Abyss 1. My background's in atmospheric systems, pressure containment, bioseal redundancies. I'm the kind of contractor the government hires when they've already decided to ignore 3 safety advisories. 2 weeks before deployment, I was patching up a sensor relay in Nevada. Now I'm at the bottom of the Pacific, inside something that shouldn't exist. The descent took just under 3 hours, sealed inside a transport pod that looked more like a torpedo than an elevator. I watched the pressure gauges climb through double digits, then triple. We dropped past where light stops. Past where cameras stop sending real color. The last thing I remember seeing through the reinforced viewport was the last glimmer of surface reflection fading like a dying star. After that, it was black. The pod hissed as we docked. A dull clang told me we'd made contact. Not a welcome chime, not a cheerful system boot, just the pressure releasing, barely. The door slid open slowly, like it was reluctant, like it wasn't sure if it should be letting me in or something else out. The corridor beyond was empty, not just unoccupied. Empty, like it had never been filled. The lights were low, yellow, and diffuse, humming just loud enough to remind me that they were electric and not natural. The metal grates beneath my boots rang too softly, like the floor had been muffled. I carried my case in both hands and followed the soft arrows blinking along the wall. No one met me. No voice greeted me. There was no orientation, just a room, marked with my name. And inside, a bunk, a desk, and a communications tablet with no functioning uplink. No signal to the surface, no satellite echo, nothing. Abyss 1 is a research base, officially, designed to monitor deep-sea thermal vents, seismic activity, pressure anomalies. I'd read the briefing packet during the descent. What it didn't mention were the access restrictions, the internal lockdown zones, or the list of crew members with entire designations redacted. I didn't see another person for the first 6 hours. Not even on the hallway cameras. The base layout is a spiral, literally. A central axis with sections curling out like the shell of a fossil. Each turn leads to more labs, more doors, more sectors, many of which are sealed without code or explanation. I followed the outer ring to familiarize myself, counting my steps to fight the pressure fatigue. The deeper I went, the more the walls curved slightly inward, almost imperceptibly, like the structure had been coiled rather than constructed. Finally, I saw movement. 2 figures. Passing silently in the distance, in what must have been Sector Delta. They didn't speak, didn't wave, just walked in step with one another, uniforms a slightly darker shade of gray than mine. Their faces were unreadable under the dull lighting. They rounded a corner and disappeared. When I reached the same hallway, they were gone, and the lights in that corridor flickered once, like they'd exhaled. I returned to my quarters. The tablet was now on. Its screen displayed a message. No subject line. No sender. Just a single line of text. Please do not speak to the reflection. I stared at it for a long time. There are no mirrors in Abyss 1. At least, there weren't supposed to be. I tapped the message. It disappeared. I ran a diagnostic on the tablet. No recent messages. No metadata, no log, just empty memory sectors and a faint hum of static on the speaker that shouldn't have been there. I shut it down. I tried to sleep. I couldn't. The bed was too still. Not in the way of comfort, but in the way that made it clear that nothing in this place moved unless told to. There was a low thud at 0217. Not a knock, not an impact. More like the sound of something very large repositioning itself somewhere beyond the walls. I opened the vent panel and listened. Water doesn't move that way, not at this depth. It doesn't boom, it doesn't resonate, but this did. And it came again, at 0239. A second thud. Then, just before 03:01, the lights dimmed. Only for a second. But it was enough. Because in the instant they flickered, I saw my own reflection in the black screen of the tablet. And it was blinking out of sync. That was 2 nights ago. Since then, I've started mapping the echoes. Every hallway in Abyss 1 has a slightly different resonance when walked. I noticed it when passing a hallway near Sector Theta. The echo changed mid-step, as if the metal had thickened by a few millimeters, or the air had compressed unnaturally. I dropped a pin marker. Since then, I've dropped 13 more. They're all in a pattern I can't fully understand. Spiraled. Concentric. Repetitive. Last night I found a locked door labeled Echo Research Restricted. No access granted. No security badge worked. But my name was handwritten on a clipboard attached to the door, in a handwriting that looked exactly like mine, only smoother, more confident. Underneath it, a note. Taped, torn, hastily scratched. The silence isn't passive. It's listening. I didn't take it down. I didn't enter. I returned to my room and watched the tablet boot itself again. This time, no message. Just a white screen, and the very faint sound of breathing. Not through the speaker. Through the walls. And I realized something I hadn't noticed before. I hadn't heard the ocean since I arrived. No creaks, no groans, no hull stress, no water rush. Only silence. Total, oppressive silence. Like the ocean isn't outside the base at all. Like something else is. And whatever it is, it's patient. Because we didn't just build this base on the ocean floor. We built it on top of something. And it's still down there. Waiting for us to finish whatever sentence we started the moment we drilled into its skin. There is no night cycle in Abyss 1. The lights never dim, the halls never sleep. You could lose years here without realizing it. The clocks tick, but they tick differently. Slightly off. Not wrong enough to trigger suspicion, but just enough to fracture your sense of rhythm. I started timing my own breath, trying to align myself with something steady. After an hour, I realized I was breathing in sync with the ventilation hum, not my own heartbeat. The base operates like a body that refuses to rest. There is always movement, but rarely people. The few I've seen don't linger. They walk quickly, carry no gear, and never speak unless addressed. And even then, it's only in brief, toneless phrases. Their eyes look not at you, but around you. Through you. I attempted to access the personnel manifest again. Denied. The only names visible are mine and two others, Dr. K. Dent and Lieutenant Hale. I haven't met either. The comm tablet, when reconnected, auto-redirects every message I attempt to send. All correspondence pings a local node labeled simply Node 0. There's no central control listed, no administrator. Just a machine buried in the network that replies only with this message. System load nominal, continue protocol, observation prioritized. Continue what protocol? There's no record of what I'm supposed to do. My title, Systems Integrity Monitor, is vague enough to mean anything, and no one corrects me when I wander. They don't even seem to notice. On my third day, I watched a maintenance crew dismantle a section of wall in Sector 3. There were 4 of them, each moving with mechanical precision, saying nothing. I stood maybe 20 feet away, clipboard in hand, pretending to be mid-inspection. None of them reacted. The section they removed wasn't damaged. In fact, it was pristine. But behind the panel was no wiring, no pipes, just more wall. A second layer. Identical. Same panel, same bolts, same label. They replaced the original panel over it without taking measurements, without writing anything down, then walked away. The next morning, that corridor was gone, replaced with a blank wall, as though it had never been there. I attempted to access the surveillance logs from that section. All camera feeds from that hour were missing, marked Redacted Scheduled Maintenance. But there was no such maintenance scheduled, and when I searched the access terminal for camera IDs, the system began to slow. Not lag. Resist. The cursor delayed by milliseconds. The interface dimmed around the edges. My own reflection stared back at me from the black edge of the screen, blinking slower than I was. So I stopped. Since then, the maintenance crews have avoided that wing. I'm starting to believe that Abyss 1 rebuilds itself when no one's watching. In some places, the metal smells different. Sharper. Like blood that's been cleaned but not rinsed. I've found seams in the flooring that lead nowhere. No hatch, no mechanism. Just seams that pulse slightly with heat. Last night, I walked the central ring from Sector 2 through Sector 6. Each time I passed the same bulkhead, I tapped it once. By the time I completed the loop, I counted the taps. There were 14. But I'd only walked 5 sectors. The corridors are looping. Not metaphorically, physically. Somehow they're reshaping as you move. Distances warp. Angles bend just slightly out of your peripheral vision. My steps echo differently depending on which direction I'm facing. Once, I turned and heard my own footsteps continue walking away. There is a lab marked BIO3. The door never opens, but the lights above it blink in intervals of 7. I started logging them. The blinks align with the sonar pulses that echo through the deepest part of the facility. There's no sonar schedule listed, but every 91 seconds, there's a low-frequency tremor that rolls through the lower decks like thunder with nowhere to go. During one of those pulses, my terminal glitched. For a single frame, just a blink, my entire screen flashed an image. A corridor I didn't recognize, filled with beds. And on each bed, a figure. Identical. Same face. Same pose. Lying still. Wearing my uniform. One of them was smiling. The others weren't. Then the screen went black. When it came back, everything had reset. No logs, no error. Just the faint smell of ozone. I checked the hardware. The battery had discharged completely and recharged in less than 2 minutes. That's impossible. Unless there's a secondary system underneath the base's energy infrastructure. A shadow network. Something not connected to our readouts but still powering the true heart of the station. I asked about it. The next day my tablet delivered a new message. Ignore floor negatives. Observe from within. I've started receiving automatic updates now. They appear without input. Short bursts of text. Cold. Instructional. Examples include, fluidity of silence indicates compliance. Self-reference causes structure erosion. Do not name the light behind the bulkhead. Each message is time-stamped at 0317. Always. I've begun to dream without sleeping. Not visions, not delusions. Just knowledge. Information I didn't study. Diagrams I've never seen. Images of organ structures fused with circuit boards. Symbols layered beneath sonar graphs. When I close my eyes, I see the central hub. Spiraled. Endless. Alive. And I understand now why the base never stops. Because it's never finished building itself. It keeps going. Expanding. Evolving. Like it's mimicking something deeper. Something older than the ocean. Something that was here long before we arrived. We think Abyss 1 is a facility. But I think it's a translation. A structure built from misunderstanding something enormous, ancient, and unspeakable. And every wall that shifts, every loop that folds back on itself, every corridor that watches you walk, is a word. Part of a sentence. And we're only halfway through reading it. I've been waking up with blood in my nose. It doesn't gush. It just lingers, dry and dark along the rim of one nostril, sometimes both. There's no pain, but there's pressure. Behind the eyes, in the temples, in the teeth. I blamed the depth at first. It's a common enough side effect in saturation deployments. But there's something different about the way it moves. Like the pressure is following me, choosing me, matching its rhythm to mine. The medical wing hasn't answered any of my requests. It's listed in the system, but physically unreachable. Every path to Med 2 loops into itself or redirects to an unrelated storage sector. When I asked an officer near one of the sealed hallways where the medics were, he just stared through me and said, "No incidents reported. Health is a self-correcting function." I think he believed that. The deeper I breathe, the harder it gets to think. Thoughts don't come in lines anymore. They come in spirals, like they're being whispered to me through layers of heavy water. I've started writing notes to myself, single-word reminders to keep track of what's mine and what isn't. But even those words shift when I read them later. The ink doesn't move, but the meaning does. Structure becomes shelter, and then becomes vessel. The oxygen mix is allegedly standard, but the scrubbers hiss like something is breathing just behind them. Every sixth hiss sounds slightly wet. I've been assigned to observe containment junctions along the South Trench bulkhead, an area labeled Sector 9L. It wasn't on the original orientation map, but my pass card now grants access. No one else seems to enter. The hallway that leads there is colder, but not mechanically so. The lights are still warm. The air still circulates. But the feel of the metal changes. The walls feel close, like lungs that have stopped expanding. I walk slower there. Not because I want to, because it's the only way the corridor lets me. The first time I passed into 9L, my boots left condensation prints behind. The floor wasn't wet. But my prints trailed behind me in fog, each one steaming slowly upward and vanishing. The pressure panels in the walls are different too. Normal panels show static or green indicators. These, they pulse, softly, like hearts. Not in a medical sense, in a sentient one. I timed the pulses. Each one syncs perfectly with the sonar data spikes recorded across the station. But those sonar spikes don't come from the trench, they come from beneath it. Abyss 1 wasn't just placed on the ocean floor. It was anchored, like a weight, or a plug. The walls of the 9L junction hall end in a dead stop, a single circular hatch marked in red with no readable text. Only a symbol I haven't seen anywhere else. 3 vertical slits, evenly spaced, like gills. I didn't touch it. But when I leaned close, I heard something moving behind it. Slow, wet, dragging. Not the ocean. Something in the walls. Something that didn't mind the pressure. Or maybe something that was the pressure. I filed my report. No one responded. Instead, the system rewarded me. Access to Observer Platform 7 was granted without explanation. That area, like many others, hadn't even been listed until now. The entrance is hidden behind a storage lift. It only opens when the platform has no recorded motion, as if it only wants to be found by the still. When I entered, the walls were lined with mirrors, perfectly polished, floor to ceiling, but none of them showed my reflection. They were all blank. I moved slowly. Each step echoed not in sound, but in vibration, through my bones. The mirrors pulsed. Once. Then a second time. On the third pulse, I saw it. A single version of myself standing in one of the mirrors. Still. Expressionless. Eyes black. Not like voids. Like holes that light refused to enter. It lifted a hand. I didn't. It smiled. I didn't. Its lips moved. I heard nothing. But my head hurt. The pressure spiked in my skull and I staggered back out into the corridor. The mirror stayed on for a moment longer, then returned to blank. That night, the pressure behind my eyes throbbed so loudly I could hear my own pulse in stereo. One in my ears, one in my teeth, one in the base's hull. I turned on the tablet. A new system notice had appeared. Do not equalize. Pressure is protective. External silence is necessary for interpretation. Interpretation of what? Of who? I've started seeing words appear in the steam on the walls after a shower. Not written. Grown. They fade fast. But I've written some down. Reverse signal doors are mouths. Echo is a lie, do not exhale when it calls. That last one chilled me. Because I remember hearing something call during my last walkthrough of 9L. Not with sound, but with need. Like the trench was trying to speak, but the water was in the way. And I think we weren't meant to keep it out. I think we were meant to bring it in. This morning a new door appeared outside my bunk. No hinges, no frame, just wall. Smooth and metallic. Except now there's a single slit in its center, just wide enough to breathe through. And when I held my hand near it, the pressure dropped in the room. The air turned heavy. And I swear I heard my name, spoken not in voice, but in structure. Spoken by the walls, by the base, and by whatever waits beneath it. There are cameras everywhere in Abyss 1. In the corridors, in the corners of labs, even above the mess hall door. Tiny black lenses barely noticeable unless you're looking for them. They blink when they record. Or at least, they're supposed to. The operational manual says they're non-rotational, fixed view, facial recognition enabled. That's what the specs claim. But I've seen them move. Not quickly. Never when you're watching directly. But if you glance away and look back again, just fast enough, you might catch one tilting. A single degree. Maybe 2. Enough to shift its perspective from the corridor to you. I first noticed it outside the filtration wing. I had just finished my daily sweep, recording pressure fluctuations along the eastern ventilation core, same as always. When I turned back toward the hallway, I caught a glimpse of the camera above the bulkhead, angled straight down the corridor. I looked away, scratched behind my ear, then back up. It was staring directly at me. Not a dramatic shift. Not something that would even register on an access log. But it had moved. I blinked, stepped back, and held still. The camera didn't follow. Until I started walking again. And then I felt it. A tiny, almost imperceptible click. The camera realigned. I checked the systems report. No recorded motion. No recalibration. No override. I tried accessing the security node. Denied. I filed a maintenance request for the camera. 12 minutes later, I received an alert that the camera had passed diagnostics and was functioning normally. Attached was an image, a still of the hallway. Empty. Except it wasn't empty. I was in the picture, standing exactly where I'd stood, but I don't remember being photographed. And in the image, I wasn't looking at the camera. I was looking behind it. That night, I started checking the feeds manually. Each corridor camera runs on a 48-hour loop. Footage is automatically scrubbed unless flagged. I picked a few at random. Cross-referenced the timestamp logs with visual recordings. The patterns didn't match. Footsteps didn't sync. Shadows moved before the people casting them. Doors closed before being opened. And in some frames, only for a handful of seconds, the cameras caught things that shouldn't exist. Human silhouettes standing perfectly still in sealed-off wings. Faces and reflective surfaces that don't belong to anyone registered. One corridor showed the same person passing by 3 times in the same direction, wearing the same uniform, with a different expression each time. I flagged the files. They vanished from the system 2 minutes later. Not deleted. Erased. Like they were never there. I stopped reporting anomalies. It's not just the cameras either. Some of the vents now emit a low electrical whine, like a charged coil stuck in loop. I placed a vibration sensor beside one. It didn't measure vibration. It measured language. There were patterns in the static, too complex to be random. Not Morse, not binary. Something else. Something that learns. I started humming near the vent. Random melodies. Inconsistent rhythms. The next day, the vent hummed back. Same tune. Off by a beat. Like it was practicing. Like it was trying to get it right. At 02:46 this morning, my personal console woke me up with a system prompt. Surveillance protocol revised. Facial echo mode enabled. I didn't know what that meant until I looked at the tablet's front-facing camera. It was on, but the preview screen didn't show me. It showed the room behind me. Empty. Only it wasn't empty. There was a figure, just outside the frame of the bed. Standing. Head tilted slightly, as though listening. No eyes, just smooth, reflective skin. The preview glitched, and reset. Now the camera refuses to turn off. Even after I disabled the power core manually. It just stays on, not blinking. Watching. 2 hours ago, the corridor camera outside my room rotated 90 degrees and fixed itself directly on my door. I walked out and stared at it, waited, and watched as its lens flickered once, white to black. Then something strange happened. The camera opened. Not visibly, not mechanically, but internally. A slot within the housing pulled back, revealing a second lens inside. Shaped like a human eye. Pale green. Blood vessels. Wet. Looking at me. I turned and walked away. Didn't run. Running feels like giving it permission. In Sector 4 there's a room no one uses anymore. Empty since the flooding last month. But the internal camera in that room was blinking again. I checked the feed. It's broadcasting a loop. 7 seconds long. A desk. A chair. And someone sitting at the desk, scribbling with frantic motion. Frame 3, the figure looks up. Frame 4, he stands. Frame 5, the camera tilts on its own. Frame 6, static. Frame 7, empty room. I watched it for an hour before realizing the figure at the desk was me. Same posture, same uniform, same skin scar near the collarbone, but the face was slightly wrong, mouth too wide, cheeks pulled tight. Like someone wearing me as a suggestion. Like the cameras are remembering what I'm supposed to be and trying to make it again. Earlier today, the security terminal in Sublevel 3 began displaying unauthorized access attempts. Each one listed the same IP. Each one occurred at 03:17 a.m. precisely. Each one was accompanied by this message. The camera has learned to dream. And now I see reflections in the lens. Not just mine. Not just wrong ones. Multiple. All stacked behind me like silhouettes pressed against glass. Watching me while I'm being watched. And one of them is smiling. Not because it's pleased. Because it's ready. Ready for what? I don't know. But I think it has something to do with the way the cameras are no longer capturing the base. They're rewriting it. The central observation tank sits at the heart of Abyss 1. Everyone passes it eventually. It's unavoidable. A massive cylindrical column of reinforced glass stretching from the subfloor to the upper scaffold of Sector D, encased in bracing steel ribs and surrounded by catwalks. It's not labeled. There's no placard, no designation. Just a soft internal light that pulses faintly, like it's mimicking a heartbeat it never had. The logs call it a pressure integrity simulator, a training tool meant to demonstrate the behavior of various materials under deep-sea conditions. But I've never seen anyone run tests there. Not once. No engineers calibrating. No scientists monitoring. Just two armed guards, always posted at opposite ends of the catwalk, never speaking, never even glancing at the tank itself. They don't watch the water. They watch the people watching the water. I passed it twice before I realized it wasn't empty. At first glance, the tank appears inert. Still. Like a void filled with heavy, motionless fluid. The sort of black-blue that distorts the edges of your vision the longer you stare at it. But there's something else in there. You won't notice it unless you stop. Unless you really let the silence in. Not just the silence of the tank, but the one in your own head. And then you see it. A shimmer. A shift. Something moving just at the edge of visual definition. Like a mass suspended in near-perfect density. Refracting light in a way that denies dimensional logic. A presence. I asked one of the guards once, trying to sound casual. "What's in there?" He didn't answer, didn't blink, didn't even acknowledge me, just placed one gloved finger on the side of his rifle. Not threatening, not aggressive, just instructional. The message was clear. Don't ask again. Still, I kept watching. From a distance, over time, through small stolen moments between corridor assignments and system recalibrations. And the more I observed, the more I noticed that the tank was changing. Not drastically, not visually, but the light inside it? It no longer synced with the facility lighting grid. I tracked the cycle. It pulses every 33 seconds, independently, gradually drifting out of sync with the rest of the station. Like it follows something older. A different clock. 2 nights ago, I returned to the catwalk after hours. The guards weren't there. No one was. The room was dim, emergency lighting only, casting a dull red hue across the floor tiles. The tank was glowing faintly. Soft green this time. Inside, I could see patterns, rings, or maybe ridges. Difficult to make out. I moved closer. The surface of the glass was cold. Not cold like metal or oxygen flow. Cold like something else was pressing back. I leaned in, and I heard it. Not noise, not vibration. A soundless sound, like breath underwater. Not expelled, but inhaled. And then the glass rippled, just slightly. A tremor. A warping like pressure shifted in response to my presence. I stepped back. The rippling stopped, but the light inside intensified. Not brighter, deeper. A richer green, full of movement that wasn't motion, and something began rising inside. Slowly. Not swimming, not floating. Emerging. I saw the outline of a shape. Humanoid, but not human. Longer limbs. Fused fingers. No visible joints. Just seamless matter tapering into points that didn't reflect. And its head, smooth, sloped, featureless, save for a single ring in the center. An indentation. A spiral. Not carved. Grown. It didn't look at me. It didn't move. It just existed. The pressure in the room climbed by several kilopascals. I could feel it in my teeth, in the cavity of my lungs, like the air was trying to decide whether to crush or contain me. I left. Didn't run. Didn't turn my back. Just walked. The next morning, the tank was empty again. Or seemed to be. The guards were back. One of them had a nosebleed. A slow one. He didn't wipe it. I tried to pull up the tank schematics. All files redirected me to section redacted. Viewing permission revoked. So I went analog. Manual archives. Old paper copies stored in the engineering bay. Buried under layers of moldy waterlog and heat-warped binders, I found a reference. An initial designation. Observation cylinder, class null. Biological containment unit, condition unconfirmed. One note stood out. A single, handwritten annotation in the margin. Do not allow eye contact. The shape remembers you back. I dropped the folder. It fell open to a photo. Blurry. Grainy. A person, standing at the tank's glass. Leaning close. Their face was melting. Not literally. But something in the image distorted them. Made their outline blur and collapse inward. Their reflection in the glass looked completely intact. Smiling. Last night the light in the tank went out. But I saw a glow from the inside anyway. Pale green. Unmoving. And for just a second, the surface of the glass bulged outward. Not cracked, not broken. Just stretched. Like a bubble. Like breath. Like something inside the tank had decided to inhale again. And as I backed away, I realized something horrifying. There is no access hatch for that tank. No external control. No pump. No drainage. It was never meant to be opened, because it was never meant to be sealed. The tank isn't containing anything. It's feeding. His name was Dr. Elias Kraus, systems biologist, behavioral mapping specialist, assigned to Abyss 1 6 months before I arrived, according to the only personnel record I was able to recover. No photo. No birth date. Just a line of clearance codes too dense to decrypt and a single note under specialization. Observer, interpreter, Class 1, adaptation contingency. No one referred to him by name. When I asked, the few crew members who acknowledged his existence at all just called him the Quiet One. I didn't meet him in a lab. I met him in the dark. It was after the third sonar pulse that week. The kind that shakes the subfloors slightly and makes you feel like the ocean is trying to turn the base inside out. I was in the lower hallway of Sector Theta when the lights dimmed. Unusual, but not unheard of. Emergency beacons kicked in. Standard amber hue. But down at the end of the corridor, one of the beacons flickered blue for exactly 6 seconds. I walked toward it thinking it was a malfunction. That's when I saw him. Sitting cross-legged against the wall, hands on his knees, head tilted slightly to the side. Eyes open, staring at the metal surface in front of him like it was a window. Not at me, not through me. Just into something. I said, "Dr. Kraus?" He didn't blink. Didn't breathe abnormally. Didn't move at all. I stepped closer. His pupils didn't respond to the light. But he wasn't catatonic. He wasn't empty. There was too much presence in his posture. Too much listening. I asked again. No answer. I crouched down, just enough to see his hands. They were twitching. Not like tremors. Like repetition. He was moving his index and middle fingers back and forth in a slow rhythm. Exactly 4 beats apart. I timed it. 4 seconds. 4 more. 4 again. It was like a loop. Or a countdown. Or maybe a conversation. When I stood, I saw the words scratched into the wall above his head. Dozens of them, etched with some sort of tool. Metal against metal. Most were in English. Some weren't. Water is a slow memory. The shape understands names, but doesn't use them. You arrived 17 minutes early. No one belongs here, but everyone returns. There were more. One sentence repeated over and over. It's too late to be early. The next day, Kraus was in the mess hall. Sitting alone, hands folded neatly, food untouched. I approached him again. This time, I sat down across from him. His eyes tracked me, slowly, then landed on my chest, where my ID badge sat. He didn't speak. He just nodded once, very slowly, then lifted his hand and drew a spiral in the condensation on the table, counterclockwise. When he finished, he pressed his finger to the center of it and mouthed something. No sound, but I could read his lips. It's waking up. He stood and walked away. I haven't heard him say another word since, but I've seen him every day since then, in corridors, in maintenance wings. Sometimes on the observation platform, staring into the central tank with that same focused stillness. Never blinking, never writing, never recording, only watching. He doesn't eat. He doesn't sleep. Yet he's always alert. One of the junior techs said they saw him standing in the lift shaft during a routine system shutdown, where no one should be during a pressure cycle. When they asked what he was doing, he allegedly turned and replied, "The tower inside the sea has begun to dream again." There's no tower in Abyss 1. But a day later, I found a blueprint tucked inside one of the service hatches in Sector 3. A set of drawings, sketched by hand, wrinkled, water-stained. Not official. Not digital. On the bottom of the page, someone had written, "Revised layout after breach. Pressure pulses now align with vertical spire architecture. One floor added beneath memory." That last phrase haunts me. Beneath memory. Like the place has layers we can't access. Not physically, but conceptually. And Kraus knows them. He walks like someone who's already been through all the possible versions of this story. He appeared outside my quarters last night. No knock. No sound. Just standing there when I opened the door to check the pressure seal. He held out a piece of paper. I took it. He turned and left without making a sound. On the paper, drawn in thick black ink, was a single diagram. A human silhouette. Split down the middle. On one side, veins, bones, eyes. On the other, circuitry, spirals, echo waves. Something resembling coral blooming from the base of the skull. No labels, except for a short sentence below. The body adjusts, the voice remains. That's all. I burned the paper, but I can still see it perfectly in my mind. That morning, I accessed his personnel file again. It had changed. Now, under assignment, a new line had appeared. Nonverbal liaison. Phase transition witness. "Memory fold agent?" I asked command. No response. Instead, the surveillance feed outside my quarters now refreshes every 4 seconds instead of 10. And on the most recent footage, I caught something. Kraus walking by at 03:17 a.m. The corridor was dark, and as he passed the central tank, it pulsed. Once. Green. And something moved inside. Just before the feed cut out, I saw his reflection in the glass. Smiling. Mouth open. Like he was finally speaking again. But only to it. Sound doesn't behave the same down here. Every textbook will tell you it travels better in water than in air. Faster, cleaner, further. But what they don't explain is how quiet that transmission can feel. How empty it becomes once it passes through enough layers of weight. Down here, noise isn't vibration. It's memory. And something is remembering us back. It started with the sonar pulses. Nothing unusual at first. Routine mapping feedback. Steady pings from the external sensor array. But a few days ago, the rhythm changed. Not gradually. It shifted instantly. A long pulse. A short one. Then a third. Thinner signal that wavered at the edge of audible range. Some of us called it a glitch. Others started wearing ear protection indoors. I just listened. I kept a recording log. Playback always fails. The sound doesn't survive transfer to the system. Whatever we capture distorts immediately on export. The waveform looks normal, until you zoom in. Then it folds in on itself. Loops backwards. Becomes a smooth, repeating spiral. Visuals that don't resemble audio at all. More like a structure. On day 14, a sonotech named Pollard locked himself in the analysis bay after a pulse cycle. He'd been staring at the low-band spectrograph for hours. Said he was close to mapping the source. "It's not a return signal," he kept muttering. "It's not bouncing. It's calling." No one took him seriously. We were tired, oxygen-fatigued, paranoid from lack of REM sleep. Then he started speaking in a language none of us recognized. He didn't stutter, didn't pause. Just sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, repeating syllables in steady cadence. It wasn't gibberish. There was structure, repetition, rhyme. The station interpreter bot failed to classify any of it. None of the sounds matched phonemes from known human languages. Eventually, he went silent. Then he laughed. Quiet at first, then louder, until he vomited blood on the floor and passed out cold. We moved him to the infirmary, at least what was left of it. Half the medbay's now converted into something else. There's a new corridor where the surgical sink used to be. Leads to a chamber with no ID code. The door reads, "Amplitude echo testing." Pollard hasn't spoken since. But he hums, softly, constantly. Same 3 notes, over and over. F-A-F. I verified the tone against the original sonar pattern. It matches. And the worst part? The sound shouldn't exist. Pressure at this depth should filter frequencies that high. The math doesn't check out. Even underwater, even with advanced acoustics, the notes fall into a range that only air should carry. But we're surrounded by water, Miles of it. No cavities, no pockets. So where's the sound coming from? I checked the bulkhead speakers. They're off. Power supply disconnected 2 weeks ago during a relay failure. And yet I still hear it. Only at 0317, and only when standing near a junction node. Not a buzz, not a click. A voice. Not words, intonation, emotion. Like the shape of thought moving through heavy glass. A few days later, I found another anomaly. I was running a calibration check on Sub-3's vent flow when I heard whispering in the pipes. Not wind, not suction, whispering. Tiny, sharp syllables just beyond recognition. I lowered my ear to the grate, and it stopped, until I blinked. And in that split second of darkness, I felt it crawl across my mind. A phrase. Not heard. Delivered. The shape of it left a mark, like a bubble pressed against my skull. I can't repeat it. Not fully. But it ended with a word I knew. Surface. I shut the panel and walked away. The next morning, someone had carved letters into the metal of the access grate. Don't listen too long, it notices. I've begun wearing earplugs during sleep. They don't help. The sound comes through dreams now. Same 3 tones. Then something beneath them. Like footsteps in silt. Like pressure learning how to walk. Dr. Kraus passed me in the hallway yesterday. Didn't stop. Didn't acknowledge me. But as he passed, he placed one hand lightly on my shoulder and whispered, "The sound's not entering. It's trying to leave." That night, I dreamed I was the sonar. Alone, suspended in the ocean's dark throat. My voice pulsed outward. But what returned wasn't mine. It was larger. A voice I had never made. Saying things I didn't want to understand. I woke up standing. In the observation room. In front of the tank. And the shape inside the water was closer to the glass than ever before. It wasn't floating. It was waiting. Listening. And then it pulsed. Once. And I heard a note that made my vision collapse. I fell backward. No impact. Just darkness. I came to 3 hours later. Medical report. No concussion. No trauma. No injury. Only a single anomaly. My hearing had improved. Every frequency. Sharpened. I could hear the heartbeat of the base itself. The coolant pumps in the walls. The blood in the security chief's temples as he passed me by. And now, I can hear them. Things no one else hears. Words spoken between the mechanical pings of the sonar. Names. Some of them mine. Some of them not. Last night, the main comms console printed a paper report unprompted. It contained a transcription. The pressure never kept us out. The ocean never wanted to be quiet. You're the static. We are the signal. Signed. No sender. No designation. Just a box. Empty. Or maybe waiting to be filled. And at the bottom, next message will arrive by mouth. Which mouth? Ours? The base's? The one inside the tank? I don't know. But I haven't spoken since. Because I'm afraid if I open my mouth again, the next voice I hear won't be mine. There is a door beneath Abyss 1 that no one is supposed to acknowledge. It has no label, no access code. It appears on no schematics. And yet every corridor map accounts for the space around it like a blind spot built into a machine. It's hidden behind a sealed hatch in sublevel 5, down a narrow service shaft that supposedly leads to a pressure buffer room. But there is no buffer room. Just that door. Impossibly round. Flawless. Embedded directly into the structure like it had grown there long before steel was ever invented. I didn't find it. It found me. 3 nights ago, while tracing a coolant imbalance through the lower reactor cradle, I came across a maintenance console still connected to the base's legacy diagnostic shell, something I hadn't seen since surface orientation. Most consoles run off the updated protocol, clean, modular, simplified. But this one, it pulsed like a heartbeat and hummed in rhythms that made the back of my molars ache. The interface looked like a sonar bloom, spiral-shaped, faint. It accepted no input. Just one line of text on loop, "You are nearing your appointment with the mouth." Then the screen went black. A map appeared, one I hadn't accessed before. Sector 0, unlabeled, unlit, unreal. A red dot blinked in the center, and I knew where it was. I shouldn't have gone. Every instinct told me to shut down the console, submit a report, pretend nothing happened. but something had already changed inside me. Ever since the sound had started to travel upward, ever since Kraus whispered those words, "It's trying to leave," I hadn't been able to sit still. So I went. At 03:17. Because of course it had to be that time. The pressure corridors were dim, red-lit. Humidity pooled along the ceiling where the condensation systems failed. The walls trembled softly, the way a stomach does when digesting something slow. I followed the path the map had burned into my mind. Left through the stabilizer column, down the core bypass, across the utility ring, until I reached the shaft no one ever used. The hatch was open. The tunnel beyond was too narrow for comfort, barely wide enough to squeeze through without gear. The temperature dropped the deeper I went, and the air lost its mechanical hum. It wasn't silence. It was something older than sound. A listening so deep and complete it made my thoughts echo back at me in reverse. And then, I saw it. The door. Perfectly circular. Black metal. Seamless. No hinges, no seams, no interface. But it vibrated. Low. Continuous. Like something behind it was breathing shallowly, waiting for a cue to exhale. There were symbols around the edge. Not carved, not etched, but implied. They shimmered when I moved like ink under skin. Familiar in the way dreams feel familiar just before you wake up screaming. And in the center of the door, a slit, not wide, not long. Just large enough to imagine the shape of a mouth behind it. And then it spoke. Not loudly, not in volume at all. It throbbed a phrase into my chest cavity. Not in English, but in pressure. And my brain translated it in its own voice. "You have approached out of sequence. Repetition will be necessary." I stepped back. The hallway behind me didn't exist anymore. There was no light, no exit, just the door. And a slow, almost imperceptible opening sound, like tissue separating underwater. Not a click, not a hiss, a yielding. The slit widened. Inside, darkness. Not absence, but presence compressed too tightly to escape. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. I felt my blood start to slow, as if something inside the chamber was adjusting me, lowering my metabolic rhythm, syncing it to its own. And then I heard it. A whisper, just behind my right eye. "One step more, and you are understood." Not threatened, not coerced, just offered. An invitation. I raised my hand toward the slit, and it began to close, not quickly, almost regretfully, as if it had expected something else, a different outcome, a different you. And as it sealed, the pressure in the corridor reset, like someone letting go of my lungs. The exit was behind me again, no explanation, no system log. The hallway was exactly as I had left it, except it wasn't. The walls were wetter, thicker, fleshier, and I swear I saw something pulse behind the light panels. I ran the moment I could breathe again. Didn't file a report, didn't speak, didn't sleep. And this morning, when I accessed my logbook, a new entry had appeared. One I didn't write. Time-stamped exactly when I had stood before the door. It reads, "Subject approached the lock. Did not enter. Instability remains. Delay acceptable." No signature. No classification. Just that. And underneath it, "The door will open again when enough of you has forgotten you were never supposed to knock." I checked the system logs. No one else was assigned to that sector. No cameras list the shaft. No alarms were triggered. But I dream of the door now, every night. And in my dreams, I'm not approaching it. I'm opening it. From the inside. We used to believe the ocean was blind. That it saw only through what we gave it. Sonar sweeps, camera drones, light filtered through titanium lenses. We assumed that whatever lived down here did so in darkness, because that's all it knew. But something shifted last week. Not in the water. In the way the base feels when you're not looking directly at it. A stillness that isn't sleep. A silence that isn't absence. It started with the external cameras. We have 57 of them installed along the outer perimeter of Abyss 1. Most are maintenance only, intended to monitor structural stress, external corrosion, and incoming sediment flow. At any given time, only a third are online, and their feeds are stored locally, purged weekly. I checked one out of habit. Camera 12B, dorsal ridge, west-facing. Footage showed standard current movement, then static. Then a frame so distorted I nearly shut it down. But I paused instead. scrubbed slowly, and saw them. Eyes. Dozens. Human in structure, animal in placement. Too many for one head, too organized for chaos. All facing the lens. Reflective. Pale green, like photophores in reverse. And then, blink. All at once, and gone. I called up the next camera feed. Nothing at first. Just sediment, water movement, mineral particulate. Then at 03:17, a single frame of face pressed against the glass. Not a human face, but something wearing the idea of one. Features too soft, melted at the edges, lips parted in suggestion more than expression. And behind it, motion. Rippled silhouettes, barely visible, as if whatever was watching had depth, not form. I tried to copy the footage. System denied it. File overwritten, replaced with a still frame of static, and one line of text. If you can see it, it already sees you. The security team dismissed it as a false positive, pressure distortion, reflection, pixel echo. But later that day, I reviewed access logs for our suits, the dive exos. Every one of them had been removed from the chamber. No notification, no record of use. Just empty. Each storage rack had a smear of salt residue, thick and gray, like the suits had leaked. No one claimed responsibility. No one even acknowledged it. I pulled the hallway footage near the exo chamber. EO317. The storage bay lights flicker once. All 8 suits stand upright. Then, nothing. Next frame, empty racks. Next frame, door closed. I initiated a lockdown of the outer corridor. By the time I reached it, the lights were out. Only emergency pulses remained. And beneath them, footprints. Not boot prints, bare feet. Too long, with webbing between the toes, leading out of the corridor and into the main atrium. I followed them. They ended at the tank. Of course they did. The guards weren't there. The tank was glowing again. But this time, no shape moved inside. Just a ripple at the glass, like someone had leaned against it gently, and left condensation in the shape of a hand. 5 fingers. Human. Almost. Longer than regulation gloves allow. And then I saw it. The reflection. Not mine. Behind me, watching from the glass. Not standing in the atrium, standing in the water. But clear. Visible. As if the tank had become a mirror. And I was on the wrong side of it. I turned. Nothing there. I checked the footage. It showed the same. Only reversed. I was in the tank. Looking out. Mouth open. Eyes closed. Hands pressed to the inside of the glass. Like I'd been waiting there for a long time. And the person watching me, was the one walking the atrium floor. Kraus passed by without stopping. Without looking. But he said a single word. Not to me. To the tank. Soon. That night, I dreamed of the surface. Only it wasn't the surface I remember. It was too still. Too smooth. Like glass stretched tight. And beneath it, just beneath, the entire ocean stared upward. Eyes open. Unblinking. Seeing the sky for the first time. And remembering something it had long forgotten. Not hatred. Not hunger. Something worse. Recognition. When I woke, my room was damp. No leak, no flooding. But the sheets were wet. And my boots were filled with sand. Dark, coarse, and warm. I ran a chemical test. It didn't match any sample from this trench. In fact, it didn't match Earth. The molecular structure was similar, but not exact. The sample contained crystalline filaments with trace memory absorption properties, like it had been pulled from a place where thought and matter had merged. The next day, the upper dome scanners failed. Each one pointed upward. Not toward the ocean, but beyond it. Like the base was searching for something in the sky. We've been down here too long. Something has noticed. And it's trying to remember what it means to be seen. I checked the live feeds again. They were gone. Replaced by static. But behind that static, if you squint, if you slow it frame by frame, you can make out outlines. Figures, walking, crawling, staring directly at each lens. Not with malice, not even curiosity. With familiarity, like they've always been watching. And the ocean? It's not blind. It never was. It was just waiting for us to open our eyes first. I started noticing it in the mess hall. Not in anything obvious, just in the way someone would sit a little too still, like they'd just learned what sitting was, or the way a fork would be held too tightly, the fingers stiff, arranged as if guided into place by instruction rather than habit. No one else seemed to notice. Maybe they were too tired. Maybe they didn't want to see. But I watched. The first time was Corporal Denny. He's always been loud, irreverent, the kind of guy who claps you on the back hard enough to dislodge a lung. But last Tuesday, he was quiet. He sat at table 3, same chair, same tray of rehydrated protein. Only he didn't eat. Just stared straight ahead, nodding in a slow, rhythmic way. Not to anyone. Not to music. Just nodding. Then he spoke. One sentence. "How long has your skin been yours?" I laughed, thinking it was some dark joke. He didn't blink. Didn't look at me. Just stood up and walked away. Left the tray untouched. Walked down the corridor like he had a destination but no memory of where it was. When I asked him about it later, he said he didn't remember speaking to me. Claimed he hadn't gone to the mess that day. His shift logs backed him up. He'd been on maintenance duty in a sealed section 2 levels below. Video feed shows him exactly where he said. But I saw him. I spoke to him. And the person I saw wasn't quite him. After that, it got worse. I started seeing doubles. Not like hallucinations. I don't think so anyway. People in places they weren't supposed to be. Engineer Patel walking past me on level 3 when I just signed her into the lift to level 1. Lieutenant Vale handing out duty shifts from behind the security desk, while simultaneously walking down the upper gantry. Each time, something's off. The voice a little too smooth. The gait too mechanical. The smile too practiced. And the reflection, if you can catch it, wrong. That's the key. Reflections. They don't match. One day, I followed what I thought was Kraus. He walked through the storage wing without acknowledging anyone. He didn't carry a datapad, didn't wear his ID badge. Just moved with a slow, deliberate grace I hadn't seen in him before. I trailed him around the corner, and found the real Kraus already in the lab, talking to 2 other techs. When I went back, the hallway was empty. I checked the security logs. No one else had been there. The cameras showed static for a full 47 seconds. Redacted. Later that night, a memo appeared on my tablet. No sender. Just text. If you see yourself, turn away. That warning stayed in my head for hours. Then days. Because I did see myself. In a maintenance mirror. But not doing what I was doing. I was standing still, head tilted, watching me work. When I looked up, the reflection didn't change. It just smiled. And that smile pulled too far back, as if the skin wasn't made to do it. I blinked. The reflection was gone. Not faded. Gone. Like it had never been there. Like it had stepped away. Or deeper. I ran a scan of the biometrics in the base. And here's where things spiral. There are more people in the system than there are assigned. By 13. 13 unregistered biometric signatures, each one within acceptable variants of crew parameters. But duplicated, as if someone copied the template and tweaked it slightly. Too slightly. I cross-referenced logs. Each signature appeared briefly near known personnel. Always just outside camera angles. Always vanishing before visual confirmation. And the more I dug, the more I found discrepancies. Uniforms folded with the wrong seams. Notes left on datapads in handwriting that matches, but isn't quite right. Conversations remembered by one person and denied by another. Footsteps that stop halfway down the hall. And sometimes, breathing sounds in rooms no one entered. I cornered tech specialist Liu 2 days ago. She's precise, observant. If anyone would notice, she would. I asked her if she ever felt like she was being watched. Not from the cameras, but from behind her own eyes. She hesitated, then nodded, slowly. Said she'd been having dreams of being dissected, not her body, but her memories. Laid out like instruments, sorted, reorganized, replayed. She showed me a bruise on her wrist. A perfect circle. She didn't know how she got it. Later, I found a smear of fluid near the airlock panel in Sub 2. Thick, grayish, sticky like sap. Chemical analysis came back as non-biological, but it contained cells, human cells, and they were active, dividing slowly, even without a host. No immune response. Just a quiet, steady duplication. Mimicry. I took a swab and placed it under the thermal scope. Watched it grow. It formed a rough human shape, then stopped, stared up at me from the slide, and I swear to God, it blinked. The next morning, the lab was wiped. All samples gone. All logs scrubbed. In their place, a single sheet of paper, printed, unsigned. We do not mean harm. We mean return. I don't know what that means, but I think it's a message. Not from invaders. Not from something outside. From something trying to remember what we are. Trying to become us again. But not all at once. One person at a time. One memory at a time. Until the base is full of us. But none of us are real anymore. There were rumors, even during training. You hear them on the transport, whispered by techs with too many hours under pressure. The first crew, the first structure. The unlogged month before Abyss 1 officially came online. They called it Phase 0, a trial run. Just a skeleton crew. Structural integrity checks, baseline readings. The foundations we were told were theoretical. But every system I've accessed since arriving, every relay, every server echo, tells a different story. Someone was here before, and whatever they built wasn't ours. I found the journal during a power dive inspection of the lower duct arrays. A section marked as sealed for pressure imbalance had shown anomalous temperature readings. When I removed the wall panel to reroute a coolant pipe, I found a cavity, a space between the walls that shouldn't have existed. And inside, wrapped in a thermal lining bag, was a field notebook. It was old, water-damaged, fragile, but the writing remained. Block letters. No name on the cover. Just a scratched label. Journal, Primary Engineer, Phase 0. I turned the first page. Day 1. Arrival confirmed. Site deeper than expected. Seismic readings off-chart. Feels unstable, but leadership says it's dormant. We've begun laying anchor pylons. First impression, like we're building a tower into something that doesn't want to hold weight. There were diagrams, rough sketches. The base's early shape. Smaller. Cruder. No spirals, straight lines, hard corners. I kept reading. Day 5. Drilled too deep. Hit layer not on the scans, not rock, not silt. Something dense, smooth, like synthetic material. When we touched it, the vibration sensors all spiked. For 20 seconds, the base resonated like a bell struck underwater. No echo. Just wait. Day 7. Initial dive team reported visual distortion near the contact point. Claimed to see their own reflections in the material, but mirrored wrong. Right hand where the left should be. One of them screamed when he saw his face had no eyes, brought them up. They don't remember anything now. Just hum. That word again. Hum. It's everywhere down here. I flipped ahead. Day 11. We found patterns in the material. Not random, not natural. Like architecture without volume. 3D structures that only exist when you look at them from the side. You turn your head, and it's gone. But you feel it, like it's in your bones now. Day 14. Kraus is talking to the wall. Says it's breathing back. We haven't had an uplink to surface in over 36 hours. Command says it's weather interference. There is no weather this deep. Day 17. The lights flicker every time we say certain words. Home. Surface. Name. The system is listening. We shut down the internal mics, but something's still transmitting. Logs show data outflow when we sleep. Day 19. One of the anchor pylons disappeared. Not collapsed. Vanished. The feed cuts out at 0317. When it comes back, the pylon is gone and there's a shadow where it used to be. A shadow that doesn't move with the current. A shadow that rises when you play the footage backwards. I stopped there, hands shaking. I closed the journal. Then opened it again. Flipped to the last page. It was written in a different ink. Darker. Smeared at the edges. The handwriting no longer looked human. The lines too long. Letters stretched as if resisting shape. It read, "This is not a base. It is an answer." But we forgot the question. We didn't build on rock. We built on memory. Something else's memory. Something old. And we woke it. We thought it was asleep. It was thinking. We thought it was still. It was listening. We thought it was a place. It was a face. And now it knows the shape of us, and it wants to wear it. Below that, Just one final line. Do not finish the spiral. I scanned the journal, every page, and tried to upload it into the mainframe. The system froze. Every word rendered into spirals. No letters, no formatting, just circles spinning into themselves. I tried to print the file. It came out blank. Not white, blank. As if the page had never existed. I brought the physical journal to command. It was gone from my locker. I didn't misplace it. I locked it, cataloged it, set a biometric seal. Gone. That night, the walls of my room began to sweat. Condensation formed patterns. And when I wiped it with my sleeve, I found the spiral again. Drawn in salt. Same as the one on the last page. I haven't told anyone. Not yet. They wouldn't believe me. Or worse. They would. And I'd see that look. The one Kraus gives the walls. The one Denny wore before he started speaking in plural. So I sit here, rewriting the journal from memory, knowing full well I'll find it gone again tomorrow, knowing something is watching through my fingers, guiding them. And when I stop writing, it will start. No one on the surface is answering anymore. At first it was just delay. Packet loss, scrambled responses, empty pings. Then came the polite messages. Transceiver recalibration in progress. Signal redirected to command routing node. Please stand by. They always arrived in the same tone, the same formatting, the same false sense of calm. Now, nothing. We send, they don't receive. Or maybe they do, and they've chosen not to hear us. Maybe the silence is the answer. We have an uplink tower, built into the dorsal reach of Abyss 1, piercing the ocean's density with an encrypted stream of high-frequency bursts. No vocal calls, just code, data strings, ghost language. I used to monitor it daily, part of my job. Now I avoid it. Because every time I check the outgoing logs, I see new entries I didn't create. Outgoing messages that claim to be from me. They're timestamped at Oro 3.17. They read like this. We're safe. The body fits. Begin replication. Do not recover. Containment has shifted to invitation. The base remains loyal. The shapes are stabilizing. I try to delete them. They reappear. I try to alter them. The file structure collapses into spirals. Sometimes, when I trace the origin signature, I find it's not coming from the uplink tower at all. It's coming from the tank. I've reviewed every external signal check, every maintenance ping, every emergency beacon flare. They're all intact. But the timestamps are off. They're identical. Identical to each other. Dozens of pulses. Same second. Same nanosecond. As if time inside Abyss 1 no longer flows forward. As if we've looped, and the loop forgot how to close. I asked for a direct line to surface comms. Protocol Alpha. It's rarely used, only for catastrophic signal breakdown or mutiny. I keyed in the command. A voice answered. Flat, neutral, filtered. This is not your appointment. That's all. No confirmation code, no clearance challenge. Just that line. And then silence. The uplink panel glitched, restarted, and displayed a single new message in static font. The surface does not remember you. Do you remember the surface? I ran to the archives. Pulled up visual files, satellite uplinks, base launch videos, personnel records, any reminder of sky, of air, of above. Most of them were corrupted. The ones that remained didn't show what I expected. There was no ocean in those photos. Just something like it. Blue and wide, yes, but still. Too still. The clouds didn't move. The light never shifted. One image showed the base entering the water at construction. But the splash was frozen mid-air, as if it had been sculpted. As if motion had to be remembered first before it was allowed. Another video played at half speed even at standard setting. It showed a technician waving goodbye. Only the wave was reversed. The hand was pulling in, not pushing out. And behind them, if you squinted, you could just barely make out something watching from the horizon line. Not a ship, not land. A shape, tall, thin, reflective. I blinked. It was gone. I cross-checked against public data. The surface logs no longer mention Abyss 1. The official index of government installations ends at Abyss 0. All mentions of our coordinates lead to empty coordinates. No structure. No personnel. No return. I requested medical verification. Location confirmation through NeuroEcho ID. The scanner refused to initialize. The readout simply said, "You are not where you were born." I laughed. Then I cried. Then I sat there for almost an hour trying to remember what the sun felt like on skin. Not how it looked. How it felt. And I couldn't. Not exactly. It was heat, yes. But dry? Was it heavy? Did it pulse? Did it sting? And what did the sky smell like? What did wind sound like through trees? Were there trees? Were there ever? Liu doesn't speak anymore. She hums, sometimes. Always the same 3 notes. Same ones Pollard used to hum before they took him downstairs. She scribbles circles on her arm now. Not spirals. Not anymore. Just perfect, repeating rings. I asked her what they meant. She whispered, "Memory doesn't go up. Only down." And then she smiled like it was the first thing she'd ever said. I'm scared to open the locker next to mine now. It's always been sealed. Always assigned to someone who never showed up. But this morning, it was open. And inside? My uniform. Not the one I wear now. The one I arrived in. Still folded. Still wet. And there was a photograph. Black and white. Old. A launch pad. An empty ocean. And something written on the back in my handwriting. We went too deep. The surface couldn't follow. I've started dreaming of ceilings. Not falling. Not drowning. Just ceilings. Smooth. Vast. And something moving just above them. Tracing. Scanning. Naming. And I always wake up with salt on my lips. Not sweat. Salt. The surface doesn't remember us. And I think maybe it never did. It began with the sound of my own voice. Not echoing, not reverberating down the metallic corridors or crackling through a faulty intercom, but perfectly spoken, flat, precise, emerging from somewhere it shouldn't. I was in the hydrothermal exchange corridor, recalibrating a secondary regulator when I heard it. One word. Confirmed. The tone was identical to mine. The inflection. The breath. Even the slight rasp I've had since the oxygen pressure spike in week 3. It wasn't me. I hadn't said anything, and I wasn't wearing my headset. I stood perfectly still. No one else should have been there. The voice came again. Softer. Override accepted. This time, from behind the vent grate, I ran the scan. No heat source. No biosignature. Just a faint electrical anomaly trailing upward along the corridor like spilled data. I followed it. Step by cautious step, down into the unused maintenance shafts beneath engineering. Unlit. Unused. Forgotten. Except someone had been there. A boot print. Not mine. Not standard issue. Wider. Shallower. Like it had been pressed in with intention. Not weight. I pressed on. After 60 meters, the shaft ended. But the wall wasn't solid. It shimmered. Faintly. Like static trapped behind concrete. And in the center was a panel. One I'd never seen. One that asked for me. My ID. My access code. My retinal imprint. I gave it everything. The panel blinked green. The wall slid away. And I entered a room I had never been told existed. No designation. No lights. No cameras. No ceiling. Just a vast circular chamber lined with dozens of containment pods. Each filled with liquid. Each filled with a person. Each of them, me. I froze. Walked to the nearest pod. Stared into the fluid. He was sleeping. Or maybe pretending. Same scar on the chin. Same discoloration on the left hand. Same half-healed burn from the reactor panel short 2 weeks ago. Except this version had no pupils. Just milky, featureless eyes behind the eyelids, twitching slightly with imagined movement. I stumbled backward. Turned to the next pod. Another version of me. Hair slightly longer. Wearing a suit I'd never seen. Label on the chest, Cycle 5. The next, Cycle 3. Then, Cycle 12. They weren't arranged by time. They were arranged by deviation. Each one slightly different. Some older, some younger, some with unfamiliar injuries. One missing an arm. One whose skin looked too smooth, like it hadn't been grown. It had been guessed. Then, at the far end of the chamber, a pod with no fluid. Empty. Open. Waiting. And next to it, a second me. Standing perfectly still. Alive. Breathing. Smiling. Not with joy, but with certainty. He stepped forward, hand extended, like we just agreed on something. I stepped back. He tilted his head, just slightly, and whispered, "You're almost finished." I asked who he was. He said, "The next you." I asked who I was. He said, "The last rehearsal." The lights in the room dimmed. Not in intensity, but in identity. The shadows bent wrong. The floor folded. And behind me, I heard the soft click of another pod opening. I ran. Through the corridor. Through the wall. Through the panel that sealed itself as I passed. Back into the station. Back into the false normalcy of the waking structure. But nothing felt the same. Every corner felt rounded where it had once been straight. Every sign on the wall contained one letter that shifted when I blinked. The next morning, the hallway outside my quarters was sealed. No reason given. The crew manifest showed one new entry. Name, redacted. Assignment, Systems Replacement Specialist Origin. Local. I requested the photo. The system displayed a mirror, not a photo, a live feed, of me. But I wasn't wearing that uniform. I wasn't standing in that hallway. And I wasn't smiling. I've tried not to sleep since. But my dreams betray me. Each night, I see my copies. Each one a little closer to the surface. Each one standing taller, looking sharper, becoming. And now I hear them outside my door. Not walking, arranging, shifting the structure of the hallway, rewriting it, to fit something more suitable. I understand now. I was never meant to finish the mission. I was meant to be measured, tested, mapped, so they could find the version that fits, the version that doesn't resist, the version that says yes. And I think they've found him. Because he's already standing behind my reflection. The hammering started last night. Not mechanical hammering. Not from tools or hands. It was deep, substructural. A low, rhythmic pulse, like bone striking bone underwater. The bass is changing. Not incrementally, not through updates or repairs, but all at once, and in silence. Sections that once required clearance now open on proximity. Rooms that used to hold storage now open into hallways I've never seen. There are levels in the navigation grid that weren't there a week ago. Coordinates that don't connect to any axis. Directions that spiral rather than align. I awoke this morning to find my quarters different. The door was further to the left. My bed was flush with a wall that hadn't existed before. There was an extra light above the sink, pulsing faintly. Not in fluorescence, but in rhythm. 3 pulses. Pause. 3 more. It matched the heartbeat I'd felt the night I first stood before the sealed door. The one with no hinges, no frame, just a slit. I dressed, found my boots already laced, as though someone had prepared them. Outside, the corridor curved where it had always been straight. When I turned right, I passed engineering like usual. When I turned left, I passed engineering again. Only this version of engineering had no doors. Just smooth walls that hummed when I walked by. And then I noticed something worse. I wasn't alone. In the glass pane of a sealed access panel, I caught my reflection. But I wasn't walking. I was standing still, looking back at me. One hand pressed flat against the glass, mouth open slightly. Eyes wide as though trying to say something, but not allowed to speak. Then the image blinked. Reset. And the reflection matched me again. I went to control. It was gone. Not relocated. Erased. The corridor led to a blank wall. Smooth. Seamless. A new door stood beside it. No label. No handle. Just a soft light above it, flickering like a warning. I backed away, but the base wouldn't let me. The hallway stretched. I walked 5 steps back and moved nowhere. The floor beneath me wasn't flat. It rose gently, tilted, as if urging me to return. I ran diagnostics. Every system reports nominal. Every alert clears itself. The logs say everything is operating within normal parameters. But there's no longer a team behind the reports. There are no engineers, no guards, no command staff. They're all gone. Not missing. Present. But not themselves. I pass them in the hallways. They walk. They eat. They nod when spoken to. But there's no life in their eyes. Just a flicker. Like tape caught in a loop. Some of them speak to the walls now. Not whispering, conversing. They pause, listen, respond. And the wall responds back. I heard it once. A voice. Deep. Slow. Wrong. Not in pitch. Not in intent. It spoke in architecture. In direction. Continue layering. Identity integration exceeds expectation. I turned the corner and saw the speaker. A bulkhead had opened. Inside, scaffolding, pipes, and something hanging, pulsing, growing. A structure that resembled part of the observation deck, but twisted. It had a window facing inward, not outward. And through that window I saw a room I recognized. My quarters. Perfectly mirrored. Down to the data slate left open beside the bed. Except the version in the window had me in it. Sleeping. Peacefully. I don't remember sleeping. I backed away. The scaffolding retracted. The wall sealed itself. Later that day I found the prints. Not on the floor, on the ceiling, bare feet, too long, trailing across the maintenance duct above the hydroponics core. I followed them. They ended at a wall. No exit. Just 4 words scrawled in condensation. Stop building yourself here. I ran. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew it wasn't directed at me. Maybe because I suspected it was. Because what if the base isn't building a replacement of us? What if we are the construction? What if our memories are blueprints? Our movements are copied like algorithms? Each breath measured. Each blink replicated. I've begun finding tools in places I didn't leave them. Plasma torch in the stairwell. Welding mask in the shower. I haven't used either in days, but they're warm when I touch them. And then today, I found a schematic in my locker, drawn by hand, detailed. It shows a new section of the base. No label. No instructions. Just a single note at the bottom. Begin layer 7. Identity lattice will bind at 04 bio. I don't know what that means. I don't want to know. But I checked the corridor logs. There is now a level 7. It didn't exist yesterday. And I swear I can feel something beneath the floor when I stand above it. A heartbeat. A breath. Or maybe just the memory of one. I asked Kraus what level 7 was. He looked up from his terminal. And for the first time in days, he smiled. You are level 7, he said. And then he vanished behind the wall as it opened to receive him. Like he belonged there. Like he'd always belonged there. I don't know how much of me is left. I don't know if I'm writing this, or if the base is. All I know is that tonight I'll sleep with the lights on. If they let me. And I'll dream of scaffolding. And of my own hands, carefully assembling a version of myself that no longer asks why. Only what next? I woke up this morning already dressed. Not just partially, fully. Boots laced, shirt tucked. ID badge clipped perfectly to my collar. I don't remember doing it. I don't remember sleeping. There's no crease in the bed, no heat on the pillow. The blanket is flat, untouched. And yet my fingers smell like metal and salt. The unmistakable scent of the corridor that leads to the lower levels. The ones that weren't here last week. The ones the base keeps building without asking. I checked my calendar. It says today is departure day. I don't remember a schedule. I don't remember permission to leave. But I remember the feeling. The tension in the walls. The hum beneath my feet. The lights blinking a little slower now, as if savoring each flicker before darkness settles again. The base is quiet. Not dead. Not asleep. Satisfied. Like it's finally finished building whatever it needed to become. I left my quarters without packing. There's nothing to take. I passed the mess hall. Empty. Not abandoned. Just still. The food trays are clean. Stacked in perfect order. The chairs aligned with mechanical precision. There are no signs of struggle. No signs of violence. Just absence. As if everyone got up at the same time and simply walked into the walls. Kraus is gone. His datapad remains, open to a single screen. A message. Cycle complete, echo consistent, subject stabilized. No recipient, no origin. Only the timestamp, 03.17. I reached the main lift, expecting it to be dead. Offline like so much else, but the doors slid open immediately. Inside, the panel had changed. No buttons, just one label, etched into the metal. Home. I stepped in. The lift began to move, not up, not down. It felt like it rotated, folded, reoriented its purpose. No hum of machinery, just the low, wet sound of something alive repositioning itself. The doors opened, and I stood in the corridor from my first day. Bright, clean, unscarred. My reflection in the polished wall was younger, healthier, but it didn't move like I did. It blinked wrong. Its head tilted a beat too slow. I moved forward. It remained still. Then it smiled. And behind the smile, I saw the spiral, etched not into its face, but in the movement of the features. Like each gesture folded back on itself, echoing inwards forever. I walked away. I had somewhere to be. The launch bay was open, for the first time since arrival. No security gate, no access code, no guards, just open water beyond the lock, and a single escape pod, clean, primed, open. I stepped closer. It was empty, but the seat had an indentation, shaped like me, still warm, and resting on the console, a message scratched into the metal by hand. You already left. I sat down, not because I believed it, but because I didn't know what else to do. The hatch sealed with a gentle hiss, not mechanical, like a mouth closing softly. I didn't touch the controls. I didn't need to. The pod launched, not violently, just removed, detached from the base like a tooth falling from the gum line of something ancient. I watched Abyss 1 recede behind me, but it didn't shrink. It changed. The lights reorganized, the structure twisted, and suddenly, I wasn't looking at a base anymore. I was looking at a face. Not human, not symmetrical, but aware, watching me go. Not with anger, but with understanding, and something else. Pride. I blacked out halfway to surface level. No warning, just silence. Then sleep. When I woke, I was standing on the shore, dressed, dry. No pod in sight, just sand. And the ocean behind me, flat, calm, empty. There were no ships, no rescue team, just footprints. Mine, leading inland, already fading. I walked for hours before finding the road. But the road was wrong. The signs bore names I didn't know. The sun was too still. The clouds didn't move. And the people, they smiled too much, not with joy, but with memory. Like they'd seen me before. Like they were waiting. I checked my reflection in a shop window. It looked like me, but not tired, not worn, rebuilt, polished, too perfect. I walked away. I've been walking ever since, each step heavier, not with effort, with clarity. I was never meant to survive Abyss 1. I was meant to be copied, folded into the lattice, measured, echoed, and then returned. Not to the surface, to the next version of the surface, the one the base is sending its children to. Because it doesn't just build below, it builds outward. And now I understand. I am not a survivor. I am not a witness. I am a message. The ocean spoke. The base translated. And now I am the story being told to a world that doesn't remember writing it. I am not leaving. Because I already did. And something else came back.